now 7 o'clock, so we will get started. We said we would start at 7. First of all, I just want to welcome everyone out there that is tuning in and taking part in our meeting. Welcome. We're glad to have you. And I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Meredith Casey, and I am the person that is going to be leading the district team over to Juneau in 2024 for the North Shore Legacy Tour. And I'm going to introduce our team to you as well. We have 8 high schools in ASDN, and we have a school representative, a lead from each of those 8 high schools. So we are going to go through the list and introduce everyone, and we'll make sure they have their cameras on so you can put a face to a name. First off, from Miramichi Valley, we have Brandon Savage.
Hello, everyone.
From James M. Hill Memorial High School in Miramichi, we have Mark Noel.
Hi, everyone.
From Bonner Law Memorial School in Rexton, we have Clint Bateman.
Hello.
From North and South Esk Regional School in Sunny Corner, we have Angela Murphy.
Hi.
From Blackville School in Blackville, we have Shannon Stewart.
Hi.
From Bathurst High School in Bathurst, we have Sean McDonald.
Hi, everybody. My camera doesn't seem to want to click over, so but I am here.
Welcome, Sean. Dalhousie Regional High School in Dalhousie, we have Lori Johnson. She wasn't able to be with us this evening, but she is part of our team. And from Sugarloaf Senior High School in Campbellton, we have Sylvie Drapeau. There's Sylvie. So this is the team. This is the team that we are starting with as we are in the very beginning stages of this trip that is going to take place in May and June of 2024. We will be adding team members to this once we start getting some enrollments and our student numbers start growing. We will build our team accordingly. So you will hear more information and more updates as we move through this process. But for tonight, we just wanted to share some information with you. This is an amazing trip. I was fortunate enough to take part in the 2019 75th anniversary of D-Day celebrations and events over in Normandy in 2019. We took 120 plus students over with us on that trip, and it was an incredible experience for every single student that was able to be there. We expect that this trip will be just as enriching. First and foremost, it is an educational trip. It really is an extension of school. It is school rules apply. And the learning that takes place is phenomenal. It's incredible. We see so much growth in our students just in the short time that they're away and that they are taking part in that trip. So first and foremost, an educational trip, but we really do try to put some balance in there too, so that they're getting absolutely the most opportunity to do and see as much as they possibly can when they are traveling through this 12-day itinerary. So we will have the opportunity to answer some questions. If you have questions, you'll see that there's a Q&A. You can submit questions to us, but we're going to wait till the end of the presentation because we do go through some frequently asked questions, and they may address any of those questions that you may have right off the top. So again, before I hand it over, tonight the meeting is just a little bit of an overview. We are going to go through the itinerary so that you're clear on what this 12-day trip consists of. We are going to give you some additional information surrounding the opportunities and the trip. And then we will go back and look at any of those questions that we might have submitted to us during this time. We are very fortunate to have a very rich and personal connection with the North Shore Regiment. And it is part of our history for our schools, for our district, for our community. We are also very fortunate because of the connections we've made in Normandy and in Holland that we are able to provide our students with the most amazing trip. And it's not a trip that any other students from anywhere else would be able to experience. It's very different because of the level of personalization that we're able to incorporate into it. So you'll get a sense of that as we go through this. And I'm going to hand it over to Brandon Savage. He's going to take you through the itinerary very briefly. But again, if you have any questions, please capture them throughout the presentation and we'll come back to them at the end. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Meredith. I'm just going to give it a second here because I was just told that stuff is not, when we did the introductions, we didn't get faces to names. They didn't switch the screens over. So I'm just checking to see, okay, I see what I did wrong. I didn't flip windows as fast as I should have, and I apologize for that. I don't know if my team's going to let me do a reintroduction, but we'll see what their mood's like after. Anyhow, so I'm going to go through with you quite briefly the itinerary for the trip. There's a lot of details and moving parts with it, but in the interest of trying to keep this to a short meeting, I'm just going to kind of gloss over some of the bigger items and kind of explain a little bit of some of the history and whatnot that's associated with them. So just bear with me 1 second while I share the website. We're going to be referring to the website quite a bit throughout this discussion. And Meredith, if you can just give me a heads up if you can see that. I want to make sure that's getting back to home.
Yes.
Are you able to see that?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. So we're leaving from Moncton, and we do an overnight flight on the first day on May 29th, which gets us into Amsterdam first thing in the morning and sets us up for a action-packed day in Amsterdam, as you'll see here. Right off the bat, as soon as we're in first thing in the morning, everyone will get a tour of Amsterdam. So you hit all the major highlights throughout the city in that walking tour. By then, as the day progresses, the big highlight, I would say, of that day is the Anne Frank House. And we're having our entire group go in through different series of appointments. Obviously, Anne Frank being very well known for her diary and very much studied, throughout different grade levels in school. Another visit we'll have, you'll see here, is the Resistance Museum, which gives students a sense of what life was like under Nazi occupation. A very interesting hands-on experience. And lastly, I'd say it has to be a favorite to kind of cap off a day in Amsterdam is a canal tour. So you get to see the sights and sounds of Amsterdam, but in the evening from the water in a boat, much like you would get from the walking tour, but again, a very comfortable and different take on Amsterdam. So following the next day, we make our way out of Amsterdam and we head to the eastern part of the Netherlands. We'll be going to the Memory Museum, which looks at sort of the Dutch perspective on the Second World War with a number of first-hand artifacts from that time period. We'll also be attending a ceremony that our Dutch will host for us on our behalf. That's a courtesy they do for us when we arrive there. They're very, very great to us and a very moving ceremony. Following that, we'll be going to the medieval town of Zutphen, which the North Shore fought a very difficult battle in April 45. Very nice little medieval town. We have our friend Tim, who we met over there in our travels, who will be giving us a first-hand tour of Zutphen and the North Shore experience there, along with the other sights and sounds of the city. And that is also where we will be staying overnight as well. So following that, the next day is a kind of an Operation Market Garden Day, which was the biggest airborne drop of all time. We'll have a photo stop at the Arnhem Bridge, where coincidentally we have some of our North Shore, sorry, the Nijmegen Bridge, where we have the North Shore guys that you see in the picture there. We'll be going to the Harlingen Museum, which is the British Airborne Museum. I was just there this past month, and they've really done a facelift to it over COVID. It's very interactive. You get a really good experience of what it was like during that airborne operation. You'll also have a photo stop at the hotel where the Canadian Army accepted the German surrender to end the Second World War in the Netherlands at Waningen. And so, and as you can see there, we've previously have stopped there. Following that, we'll be heading into Germany. So we're having a kind of a German stop in this tour into the Rhineland, which is an area where the North Shore fought in February 1945. We'll be doing a drive-through. A lot of it's very kind of rural, but we'll be doing a stop in Cleve. Cleve is also known for Anne of Cleve, who was the wife of King Henry VIII. There's a synagogue that was destroyed during the Holocaust and is now turned into a memorial to the Jewish victims of the city, and plus plus opportunities to be able to kind of explore a little bit in a German town. Following that, we end up in Nijmegen. Nijmegen is a place that Father Hickey and Scarlett Dawn wrote quite a bit about because the North Shore spent Christmas of 1944 there for the most part. And it's a very large Dutch city with all kinds of different sights and sounds, very, very interesting Dutch architecture. And we cap off the evening with a very interesting way of remembrance called the Sunset Tour, which is in honor of the 48 American paratroopers who died during Market Garden. Every day, a Dutch veteran shows up to this bridge at sunset, and anyone who shows up can participate in the march. And as this Dutch veteran passes under the streetlights, as you can see in this picture, they light up one by one, and all 48 of them, obviously, to remember those who died in the American Paratrooper Unit. And so there is our day there. Following that, we go from Nijmegen and into Belgium. So this day we start heading our way into Belgium. We do a quick stop at Groesbeek War Cemetery, which a number of the North Shore guys are buried from fighting in the Rhineland region in the southern part of the Netherlands. We'll also head on way to Belgium, Camp Vught. And Camp Vught is a concentration camp, a smaller one compared to the more infamous ones of Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen and Dachau, but nevertheless no less sinister because of its purpose, which is a really good example for the students to see firsthand the whole part of the Holocaust at work here. And so that is en route to our travels in Belgium. We will be stopping, this is kind of a development over the last couple of days. We're working on stopping at a very nice medieval Belgian town for lunch. And we'll have more details about that once we have them finalized, but that again in our travels to Belgium. We'll also be doing a stop at the St. Julian Memorial, which has the famous brooding soldier, as you can see here. We'll also stop at Essex Farm, which is where John McCrae wrote In Flanders Fields, which we all know from our Remembrance Day ceremonies that we attend. And finally, we do end up in Ypres. Ypres is the site of a lot of the major battles that the Canadians fight in the surrounding countryside. But more importantly, there's a memorial called the Menin Gate, as you can see here. And it's the names of all the soldiers from the First World War in the British Empire that have no known grave. And it's a ceremony that happens every day since World War I ended at 8 o'clock. Small little ceremony, very much like our Remembrance Day ceremony that we'll get a chance to attend, and I'm hoping be able to participate as we'll work with our Belgian partners on that. Following that, we'll do a quick kind of evening stop in Passchendaele, which is again another bloody battle that the Canadians fight during the First World War before ending our day. The next day, a little bit more of World War I. We go to Tyne Cot, which is where those who were killed during Passchendaele are buried. We'll also head way south to Vimy Ridge. Vimy Ridge being one of probably the most important battles of the Canadians for this First World War because of the identity and it put us on the map, so to speak, as an international player. And you'll see here there's recreated trenches, the actual original shell holes from the battle itself, grown with grass, even the tunnels underground. We will be able to see that the Canadians dug before the battle, and ultimately Vimy Ridge itself, a very beautiful but very sad memorial dedicated to the Canadian dead from that battle. And so we'll have a chance to be able to see that and take pictures and whatnot. After that, we'll have a quick stop at a German World War I cemetery. And the reason we do that is it's interesting to see what the other side has done, especially if you look at the German perspective where, you have so much sacrifice, yet you're kind of on a losing side and maybe not the best side to be fighting for. So it's the way of how other nations memorialize their dead. And so we do a quick visit there, and it is different and it's quite moving nonetheless. We also do a stop at the Rings of Remembrance, which is a massive, massive ring of names, 500,000 names, all in alphabetical order, no matter their nationality, German, Australian, Canadian, French, that died in just that immediate area during the First World War. And the names go on and on. The kids just it just blows our mind to see that the visual that represents from the war. And lastly, on that kind of World War I theme, we head even further south on another short drive to Beaumont Hamel. And Beaumont Hamel is the place where the Newfoundland Regiment during the First World War in the Battle of the Somme, right here, was completely annihilated. It's the reason why on Canada Day, because it happened on July 1st, 1916, why in Canada Day in Newfoundland is a kind of a dark day in the morning. They still do Canada Day in the evening fireworks, but the first part of their day is very much a remembrance day. And so we'll get a chance to see the area of that and where that took place. We end our day at Dieppe, and Dieppe is known for the failed commando raid by the Canadian Army in August of 1942. So students get a chance, and travelers get a chance to tour around, see Dieppe, see the sights from the raid itself, along with grabbing a bite to eat and seeing the different shops. It's a nice little seaside town. So following that, we make it's a nice little seaside town. So, so on day 7, June 4th, 2024, we're going to make our way then to Juno Beach Center, leg of our Normandy experience. Juno Beach Center is famously in the news just recently because the Canadian government's agreed to buy some property that they were trying to put a condo on, which is very fortunate that that's happening. It provides a really good overview of the Canadian contribution to the Normandy campaign. We also go to another place called Adelmanche 360, and it's this massive multi-screen 360-degree dimensional video that shows the original footage with surround sound, and it really immerses you into what the battles were like in Normandy. It does a very good history or historical summary of the Normandy campaign, and I find it just so much sets the stage for the things that the students are going to see during the trip. And then it has a beautiful view, as you can see at the top of overlook. We then get into a stop at Longnes-sur-Mer, which is one of the last places where the German guns, the massive German guns that were going to try to stop D-Day are still there. And you can see why, because these things are so massive and these massive concrete bunkers. So what do you do with them? Students can actually walk in behind them and be on the guns. They can look outside the pillboxes out onto the ocean itself. Quite a remarkable sight to see it from, again, the German perspective of things. And lastly, on that kind of beach area, we'll be stopping at Omaha Beach, made famous by the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan. So you'll get a chance to see the American perspective of the beach itself. And on our way back, we stop in Bayeux to see the Bayeux Trapeze, which is the depiction of the Battle of Hastings 1066 battle. William the Conqueror came from Normandy. Essentially, that battle changed English history, and England as it is known today, and it's kind of propelled it into the medieval and modern era. And we have our group dinner and hotel in Caen. So we're based out of Normandy for the next couple of days or so. So on the June 5th, we make our way to some of the more North Shore Regiment based sites that we'll see. So start off with, we go to Carpe Cay in the morning, and Carpe Cay will be hosting a ceremony in our honor and our behalf. Next to the ceremony, that is the monument, the only monument that the North Shore erected in all of Europe by themselves as a regimental association. We're also, famously, for those of you who remember, she will know that we just twinned this past summer with Carpe Cay, so there'll be a lot of connections going with that. Following that ceremony, we head to the Abbey Ardennes, which is an unfortunate site behind a church where a war crime took place, where a number of Canadian prisoners were murdered by the SS, and their faces and names are memorialized on the wall of where this took place. And again, just shows the cause, and some of the obviously war's nasty, but this is even taken nasty to another level. Following that, we make our way again closer to the beaches. We do a quick stop at Hell's Corner. Hell's Corner is an area on June 7th, where the Canadians stopped a very major German counterattack that, had it not stopped it there, would have threatened D-Day, as it's debated by historians today. And there's a monument dedicated, and particularly the North Novas were ones who really made a very last stand, so to speak, against that counterattack. And so we do stop along the way. Lastly, we get a nice visit to Saint-Aubin-sur-Mer, where the North Shore landed on D-Day, and you'll be taken through the actual landing sites where they step foot off the landing craft, to the famous house, as you see here, that shows up in the landing footage of the North Shore that was identified a few years ago, to the town itself, to the different sites. You see there's beautiful restaurants, a very nice seaside town today that people go to vacation. And even the German defenses like this gun are still intact. And so you'll get a very detailed tour of it, where with the monuments that are dedicated to the North Shore, with the list of the dead, as you can see there as well. By evening, we'll do a quick stop at the Canada House, which is further down the beach, where the Ontario Queen's Own Rifle Regiment landed. And we'll also get a viewing of a film called Dans les Yeux, which was filmed from our previous visit in 2019. This was an older couple who were teenagers at the time of D-Day and witnessed with their own eyes not only D-Day, but their own liberation by the North Shore. So again, puts a lot of what we're doing into sort of context on the place where it all happened. And the last thing is our travelers will get a chance in the evening at dusk to go to Benay-sur-Mer, which is where the Canadians who were killed in the fighting in D-Day in the first couple months in Normandy are buried. And in cooperation with our French friends and students, travelers will get a chance to lay a candle on the grave of the over 2,000 Canadians buried at Benay-sur-Mer in a very, very nice and obviously very emotional ceremony that we have not done yet. This is a very new thing that our French friends have started, and so we're very fortunate we'll be able to take part in that. The following day is June 6th. June 6th is the actual anniversary day. So we started off with in Saint-Aubin on the beach itself, where the French host a commemoration that we attend and participate in. And I'll let my colleague Chris in just a moment kind of speak to that for a second. We do a number of smaller kind of ceremonies. We kind of jump around to the different very important points that the North Shore fought at different points during that day. And the town of Saint-Aubin hosts our entire group for lunch. And following lunch, we then march out, or walk, I should say. I don't want to scare you away with march, but we walk out from lunch about a kilometer down the road in the same road, the same footsteps that the North Shore took, and in particular Arjun McNaughton, who was filmed in the Heritage Minute that came out back in 2019, and participating with, again, our French friends in Tailleville. We'll do another ceremony there as well. Following that, at the end of the afternoon, we head back to Saint-Aubin, and we have kind of just quiet, reflective time, because it's quite a day, D-Day, and what you experience is emotional and a very once in a kind of lifetime experience. And so we want people to be able to just kind of relax and maybe take in some pizza, mussels perhaps, or maybe you want to see more on Saint-Aubin and go exploring. So there'll be time to be able to do those kinds of things. The following day, we head to Paris, and on the way to Paris, we have a quick stop at Bretteville-sur-Lazare, which is a Canadian cemetery dedicated to men who were killed in the last month of the Normandy campaign, July-August of '44. We do have another photo stop at a memorial called Mount Ormel Memorial Museum, which is at the top of the hill overlooking the Falaise Pocket, where the Canadians fought along with the other Allied forces to effectively end the campaign in Normandy. And before I get into Paris, I just realized I never cued in my colleague Chris to explain a little bit about what we do with the memorial. So I'm going to flip it over to you for a second, Chris, and hope I don't mess this one up. So Chris, I'm going to send you to live. So if you turn your camera on, and you can give maybe everyone a kind of an impression of what kind of goes on with the ceremonies that we do overseas.
Okay, I hope everybody can hear me. Can you hear me, Brandon?
Yeah, you're good. Yeah.
Okay. So I'll ramble here for a minute. So To me, and I apologize, I have a cold. To me, this trip, like the one in 2019, is students stepping back into the past. The kids on these trips, they're not just reading about it in books. They're not watching documentaries on TV or whatnot. They're living these events. They're experiencing these things firsthand. And it's kind of a cliche, but literally they're walking in the footsteps of the North Shore Regiment, of the brave Canadians who fought for our freedom, 80 some years ago. And they're doing it out there in the real world. And, that's the ultimate classroom, is out there in the real world. So this trip is hands-on. It's experiential learning. It's tailored to our country's history, Canadian history. It's tailored to our local history, our North Shore history. And it's the legacy of the brave and courageous English, French, and Indigenous soldiers who made the ultimate sacrifice in World War II. And, I see this trip as the ultimate act of remembrance. So in 2019, our students had the opportunity to participate in D-Day commemoration ceremonies on Juno Beach and at the towns of St. Aubin and Tyville and Carpiquet. I had students conduct research on the history of the North Shore Regiment. We collected historical accounts. We collected personal stories from veterans and the families of veterans who live here in the Miramichi area. We looked at Father Hickey's wonderful book, The Scarlet Dawn. And for all of you out there, if you don't know that book, that's almost step one for a trip like this, is to find a copy of that book, read it, immerse yourself in what is such a personal firsthand account of what it was like to be there and experience it, and get to know the personal side of the lives of these guys that went over there and fought, and of course in many cases didn't come back. We created scenes from that to insert into the various ceremonies. Some ceremonies we were participating in, some ceremonies we basically sort of created ourselves. And then the French participated in those. So I had students in authentic vintage World War II North Shore Regiment uniforms. We had French immersion students offering French translation. We had students planting crosses, excuse me, on Juno Beach to commemorate those that lost their lives on D-Day. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, in terms of the hands-on things that kids did while we were there. And I think it was an amazing experience for everybody involved. And I know for a fact that through our contacts, our friends in the Normandy region that we are still in communication with today, that the French still talk about what we did, what the kids did in those ceremonies while we were there, because it was so unique. Because it's not the way that they have their ceremonies. Their ceremonies are very sort of traditional Remembrance Day ceremonies, but to see young people sharing the stories, telling the stories, being the voices of these guys from the past and bringing those voices back to life for a minute is so powerful. And I remember one older gentleman came up to us and shook every one of the young lads' hands that was in uniform and said, "I just want to thank you." He said, "I've heard those stories told before, but I've never heard them told quite like that." So, those kids, that really resonated with them. They realized they had done something very unique and very special. I organize Remembrance Day ceremonies here at Miramichi Valley High School, and my focus has always been about bringing the voices of the past, the war dead, back to life for a minute, to make people realize that these were just regular, real people, just like we're all regular, everyday, real people with, husbands and wives and kids and families and friends and hopes and dreams and all that sort of stuff. And, allowing their stories to be reenacted, to share the personal side of that, the personal stories, rather than just the facts, the statistics, is such a powerful way to remember the veterans and remember the past, our contributions. And I think it resonates with the kids. It makes history come alive for them, so that history is not that boring subject in school that they hate. I mean, it's something that's alive, it's living, it's breathing, it's relevant to them. There's connections to be made. And it just makes this whole trip such a powerful learning opportunity. And not just for kids, for adults going on this trip too. It's the same thing, to make those connections, to immerse yourself in that and experience it in a way that just you never get a chance to do. It's just a very unique learning experience. And Brandon, I hope I answered your question.
I would say you did. You did a pretty darn good job. So I'll take it from there. Thank you, Chris. And I will bring it back into my my itinerary again. And So as I said, where I left off is we were on our way to Paris. Well, after our photo stop here at the top of Mount Royal at the Falaise Pocket, we arrive in Paris. So the war is over. we're in Paris. Paris on that day, you're going to have an opportunity to be able to go to particular places you'd want to. How we're going to organize that is that obviously adult travelers will be able to hit up a spot where they like. We'll have different buses going to different places, so like the Eiffel Tower or the Louvre or the Arc de Triomphe or wherever. For students, they'll be based on a chaperone to travel through the city at points of interest. So there will be a bit of freedom there to be able to see different parts of Paris. The following day, we're still in Paris, but that day in the morning, you'll have an organized tour of Paris. So you get a chance to see if there were maybe, you got your bucket list covered, but there were a couple of things maybe that you didn't have time to be able to get into. You'll have a chance to be able to do that in the morning here with the organized visit of Paris. In the afternoon, we follow that up with a visit to the Palace of Versailles, the famous house of King Louis XVI, with all its architecture and extravagance and paintings and marble and bedrooms. And as you can see there, it's a very, very, very nice place, and it's immaculate gardens in the back. And so you'll get a chance to have a detailed guided tour of the Palace of Versailles. Following that, we have a group dinner in Paris. Overnight in a Paris city hotel, and I don't know, sadly to say, but the next day we head back to sunny Canada. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to my colleague Brett to get into maybe a little more of the details with regards to probably some of the questions you're going to have later on, and hopefully he'll be able to answer them in his explanation here. So you can take it away, Brett.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Can you give me control, buddy, to share?
Yeah, I'm gonna connect your content right now and send live, and what you have on your screen is now on.
Okay. All right. So it's really important that all of you who've tuned in so far that you feel really confident about what your kids or yourself are going to get to see. There's not much much more we could pack into the itinerary than we have. But it's also really important that you understand that this is a really safe and enjoyable experience for yourself or for your child. And so I'm going to go through the frequently asked questions that I'm sure many of you have who are online with us. If you go to the website, they're all there. I'm not going to read through them, but I am going to touch on some certain things. So if you go to the main page after you choose your language of interest and you go to frequently asked questions, and so I don't have to really explain what kind of tour this is. All of these team leads that you were introduced to a while ago all have a real invested interest in promoting and helping Miramichiers, North Shore people, all make the pilgrimage to see these sacred sites. And so you're in really, really good hands with this team that's going. Speaking of which, you've met the school leads, and the chosen dates are obviously to coincide with the 80th anniversary of D-Day and to get kids back in time to write exams. So that's the reason for the selected dates. Any student who applies and is accepted between grades 9 and 12 in any of these Anglophone School District North high schools are welcome. In addition, the last time we went, we had such a really request from the community to go as well, that there was an adult tour organized, but sadly it was shot down with COVID. And so this time we're trying to encompass both the adults, the community members, as well as the students, and so we all get to make the pilgrimage together. If you have a child who is younger than grade 9 next year, then they must be accompanied by an adult, which is fine. And so community members, of course, are welcome. There are all kinds of people from the North Shore and really across the country who are descendants of the North Shore Regiment of the 20th Field Battery, and so this trip is for you as well. Obviously, it's a little different dynamic with the students and the adults. We haven't combined anything like this before, and so EF has stringent policies in regards to background checks and so on for the adults, for all adults, including the chaperones, and that will be provided to you as we move forward. Also, the school district has a 701 policy, which is meant for adults interacting with students, and so that will be provided to you as well. There are no additional costs to these little steps, but they are just extra little safety measures to ensure that everybody who is going is vetted, and so everybody has a great experience. Unfortunately, this is not a wheelchair accessible tour because of the tight confines of a lot of the places we go to, and there are hotels that don't have some hotels that don't have lifts, and so they're not accessible for wheelchairs, unfortunately. Do you need to be a history buff? Well, you've seen Brandon's itinerary, and of course it helps, but you don't have to be. You will be provided with all of the material that you will see on tour, and so there should be nothing that is a surprise for what you that will be in front of you. The students will be well fed with all of the background of all the things we're going to do and see. The adults will receive the same information as well, and it's up to you to either read it or not read it. It's up to you. Everyone will get something out of this trip, whether they're prepared for it or not. But obviously, the more we prepare for something, the more we get out of it. Some tours, when we take kids over, there are times where there is a rather demanding walking expectation to get from one side of a city to another, or up hills or wherever. This is not that type of tour. We've considered the adults who will be traveling with us, and so almost all venues are bus pulls up, bus drops off, people get back on the bus, and away you go. And so there will be a little bit of walking, but it is not one of those death march type tours. The tour provider is EF Tours, and some of us have been traveling with EF Tours for close to 20 years, and they have written the book on student travel, and so we feel very safe with them. They communicate really well. There will be a tour director from EF, a local, who will meet us at the airport in Amsterdam and is with us 24 hours a day until they drop us off at the airport in Paris. And so they look after all the logistics on the ground, the hotels, the meals, the venues, and so we get really good treatment. We've been to places where there have been thousands of people online, and then all of a sudden the EF group gets pulled in and they get a side entrance, and so it's really beneficial to have all of these the safety measures that EF Tours provides. The tour is an English tour. Obviously, we'd love to have Francophones with us. If there are enough Francophones that enroll, we can provide a Francophone bus, and then the tour director is French, and all of the literature is French, and so that all depends on numbers. But of course, we'd love to have Francophones with us. Please make sure that your passports are valid through January of 2025, which is 6 months past the tour date. That's a requirement from EF. We'll go over packing lists with you as we lead up to the trip, suggestions on what to pack and what not to pack. EF is really good about accommodating dietary concerns and allergies, and so that gets done through EF. We would take your requests and then pass those on to EF, and then the tour director makes sure that your concerns are addressed at every meal. We will ask you leading up to the tour, shortly before, for a personal profile. It will be done online and it will be kept secure. Just so that we have a quick physical description of you. We'll ask you to have a picture of your passport that we can keep in case there's an issue of some kind, and we can provide it to the authorities. And so that helps a lot. But again, that'll be done as we progress. Money on tour in Europe, we always suggest kids bring credit cards or a debit card tied to a checkings account. But again, that's another thing that will be addressed as we prepare for the tour. Tipping is customary in Europe, and so we've taken that off your plates. We've added $168 or $170 to your program fee, and we've buried it into that. And so what EF does is they cut our team a large check, which is the 170 times however many travelers we have, and then we will dole out all of the tips on tour to bus drivers and to concierges and to tour guides and the tour director and so on. So you will not have to worry about tipping in any way. It's covered. This is a school trip, as Meredith alluded to earlier. So the expectation is that you will be on your best behavior, and we represent Canada when we do these trips. And so the expectation, EF's expectation, is that we will be on our best behavior and we will be a good ambassadors. And it is a school trip, so school rules will apply, especially for the students. Staying with the group, obviously adults, if you want, you've got your free time, you go do whatever you want to do. Students will be required to stay with the group and do all of the tour itinerary things. They've paid for them. We're going to make sure that they get to see everything and do everything they possibly can. There will be times when we can, we've got we're in Zutphen or somewhere, and this is a small little city center, and we can give kids free time to explore. They've always have to stay in groups of 3 for safety reasons. And then, as Brandon said, in larger cities, the chaperones will come up with itineraries of, this is what I'm doing. Would anybody like to come with me? And so that's that itinerary, and somebody else will come up with another itinerary. And so you will always have a chaperone in charge of your child in larger centers. But in smaller centers, obviously we want to give kids a little bit of freedom to go and explore and to be Canadians in Europe. And so traveling in general is, as most of you know, obviously you've tuned in here, and so you see the value in European travel or in travel in general. But there are little idiosyncrasies with travel, and sometimes there's a lot of waiting, and then hurry up, go as fast as you can, and then wait, and then wait, and then wait. And so we'll prepare the travelers for those types of situations. I'm sure many of you have questions about accommodations. They are based on, for students, they are based on 4 occupancy, so 4 students to a room of the same gender. And they, the adults, they will be based on double occupancy. Adults are able to purchase a single room at $40 a night at the time of enrollment. And so if there are any adults out there who are considering going, then you can pay a $40 supplement and have your own room for the duration of the $40 a night supplement and have your room for the duration, or you can not pay that and be paired up with another person of the same gender. Families will be placed together. If a family is traveling with a student who is grade 9 to 12, the preference for EF is that that student get to stay with the kids, so they get the student experience, and the family would be housed in a triple or a quad or whatever the case may be. Your program fee, as you've probably seen, is for student is $1 under $5,000, which is extremely good value for the product. For adults, it's $55.79, and this is good until December 15th. So at December 15th, prices will certainly increase. As a matter of fact, they've extended it from, we wanted to pitch this tour in June, but then we said, well, let's see how international travel plays out over the summer. And many of you probably got to travel. Brandon was just overseas. And so we feel this is a good time to get back at it. And so they've extended our price until December 15th. So if you enroll by December 15th, you are guaranteed that price. After that date, fees will definitely increase. So how do I pay? You go through these links, and there are options that EF will provide you. One being you can pay the whole amount. I certainly was not that position with my daughter, and so I went on this automatic payment plan. So we pay bi-weekly for the duration of the time between now and the trip. There's a manual payment plan where they will ask you to pay a lump, and then 30 days later another lump, and then 110 days prior to the tour, I believe, they'll ask for the balance. And so there's a number of different avenues. As a matter of fact, they have one option where you can pay longer than the allotted time, and so you can pay for the tour after the tour exists. So if you wanted to lengthen the payments out and reduce them, they have that payment plan as well. But those are done through EF Tours. This group does not touch any of your money. There are two insurances. One is this global travel protection plan, and we've buried it into your cost. And so over the years, we found that every year there has been somebody who's needed that either prior to the tour or on tour, medical issues or baggage loss and so on and so forth. And so that is non-negotiable, that is mandatory. And so that will make sure that when your child is on tour or you're on tour, everything is looked after. We've had doctors come to hotels over the years and identify ear infections and give the prescription. They take you down to the pharmacy, and the next day the kid's great. And so that covers that kind of stuff. There's a second insurance that you can choose at the time of enrollment called Cancel for Any Reason. And it's a $99 fee. And it is all about money you get back should the tour be canceled, should there be some kind of natural disaster, should COVID reappear. That is money back. And so that is up to you whether you choose to purchase that. I did purchase that for my daughter. So that gives you an idea of the value that we place on it. And so if you have any more questions regarding this stuff, there's a really good, helpful 24-hour helpline with EF Tours. You can call that. Parents have been very satisfied with the service they've gotten. There's also this booking conditions that will answer all of your questions as well. COVID-related questions are covered in this link, and it's so fluid that sometimes these policies change by the month. And so these are the current expectations with COVID. They're in here. As I said, everything else is in these booking conditions, all the fine print, all the legalese. So how do you enroll? You click this link, or there's also a button on the main page with the itinerary and the frequently asked questions. And so you can go directly through there. And so what it will do is it will take you to a North Shore Legacy 2024 application page. And that is where you fill out your information, and that information will come to us. And that is primarily so that we have your contact information should we need to contact you. We would like to use that email to put on the Teams, which was where all of the conversation and all of the information will be pushed to kids and to adult travelers. And also it allows us to have an idea what is your connection to either the North Shore Regiment or the 20th Field Battery or any of those World War I units that we might see. And so Brandon is really, really good at saying, oh, I didn't realize your grandfather was this. And so he can identify maybe where they were exactly on a certain day, or if you've got a deceased relative, he's able to identify exactly where that person is buried. And so it just adds a whole other level of connection for all our travelers, that application. Once you submit that application, it will come to the North Shore Legacy Tour Gmail, and then it will send you an enrollment link. And that is where you go to EF Tours and you complete the process of enrollment. And so, as I said, the deadline is the 15th of December, and you will receive this email as soon as you submit your application. And I think I was also supposed to talk a little bit about the travel for credit. And so the Travel for Credit is a new program, and the province is really after this experiential learning things. And so this could not be any more experiential than what we're doing. And so there are two options for your child to receive a credit in participation with this trip. The first one we recommend is Mr. Savage has put together a North Shore Regiment history course, which he'll offer at Miramichi Valley, but it will also be available to anyone, anywhere really, in the province or the world at large, and it will be a concentration of the Second World War with specific interest in the 20th Field Battery and the North Shore Regiment. And so there could not be any better preparation than that course for your child. It'll be offered in the second semester of 2024. So just leading up to the tour, as well as on the tour, and then a little bit of summative evaluation at the end. The other option, should a school choose to offer this, is this personal interest credit that is available to students. It would involve a student going to your team lead at your school, and then probably having a conversation with the guidance department and the principal about, these are my specific interests, and I can meet many of these curricular outcomes in the modern history curriculum, or in the world issues curriculum, or in the culinary curriculum, or in French language curriculum. And this is my plan to do over a 90-hour semester. And this is how I would like to get my credit. And so James M. Hill is really, really good at those kinds of things. And so this is, the onus would be on the student to go to their team lead to work out a plan. It will be different from school to school. And Brandon, I think that's it for me, buddy.
Okay, I think Meredith, I'll send it back to you, and I'm just looking at the questions. I don't see, I think we have the exam question maybe, and I'll put you on here first, Meredith, and send you live. Won't make that mistake again. I think we have a question about the exams that came up right at the beginning. If you wanted to talk about that, and I'll see if there's any others while you explain that one.
Sure. First of all, I just want to say thank you for that information. I know it was a lot of information. We have asked Brandon and Brett and Chris to kind of lead the content part of it, because they've done this trip 5 or 6 times now. So they are very familiar with this particular trip. But I want everyone to know out there too that our other high schools have come up with some amazing projects and different initiatives that they've taken on in the 2019 trip, and this would be no different moving forward. We have 18 months ahead of us before the trip takes place, and each of our high schools have their own personality, and they find their way to create that engagement for their students. And there are some really special projects that come out. So it's amazing to see each of the schools develop some kind of an expertise in a particular area that relates to the trip that we're going to be taking. And it's just phenomenal what the students and staff end up doing. So to go back to the question about exams, I'm going to base it on what we did in 2019 and did a quick roundtable with our high schools. For the most part, any of the heavier courses were pushed, those exams were pushed to the latter part of the schedule, so that there were days from the time the students got back before they had to do that, particularly those heavier exams. Because we know so much in advance as well that the schools do their best to schedule those exams accordingly, so students aren't coming back and having to write an exam right away. The other thing too, there were some exceptions where, depending on the school and the course, some students had requested not exemptions, but opportunities to write prior to the trip taking place. And so it kind of varies from school to school to school, but the schools do take this into account, and they do their very best, and they work with the students, and they know the schedule so far in advance that they do try to accommodate that so that no students are coming off the plane and having to write an exam. I hope that answers that question, and feel free, any of the other leads, to jump in and add anything if there's anything else that you wanted to say on that.
No, I think that was pretty good. We have another one here. Is there an opportunity for students from the same school, same gender to room together? And I'm guessing that's overnight accommodations.
Okay, so again, any of the leads can jump in and correct me if I'm mistaken. But what we do try to do, as Mr. Cameron had mentioned earlier, students from the same school will room together, the same gendered students. We do allow them to make requests. So the school will look at that and look at the combinations, and that is taken into account once we know all of the students that we have, we do keep them together for the rooming situations. But they do make requests, and that is the way it had rolled out. Now, if they don't, they may put in a request, and there's one person, a friend that they want to have room with. Well, they will still have 2 other people in that room with them. That could be from their school or potentially from another school, depending on our numbers. It's all going to come down to numbers. And once we get closer to the trip, we'll have some more of that information confirmed, and we'll be able to fill in some of those blanks. But yes, we certainly do encourage and let the students make those requests to room with friends.
Okay, we have another one, and any of the leads like jump in, so Merida doesn't have to maybe do all the talk if she doesn't want to do it. This one is in particular about students with life-threatening allergies and food. Have they attended trips, and if so, were their needs and safety met? And I don't know if any of the leads wanted to talk, because I know other people here have traveled with students before. They wanted to talk about that in particular. Is
there anyone that wants to tackle that one and weigh in on that one?
Yeah, we've certainly taken kids with that had EpiPens, and the school lead becomes very knowledgeable about the requirements for that student. It really comes down to how responsible is your child, and so most children are very aware of what they can and cannot do, and they're very upfront about that stuff. And so yes, the answer is yes, we've taken kids. Yep.
Okay. I don't see any other questions popping up on the Q&A. Is there, I give a moment if there's anything else that any of the attendees have to or want to ask, just type it in the chat and we'll be able to see it.
I do just want to take a moment and kind of go back and just reiterate the fact that this is an amazing trip. It's an amazing opportunity for anyone who gets a chance to take part in it. And it was life-changing. I know it seems a little extreme, but it really was life-changing for me. And to be able to see our students engage and feel these connections, it was truly a once-in-a-lifetime trip for so many of our students. We have an amazing team that we're building. We're very consciously and strategically building that team. We have representation from each of our 8 high schools. Again, as enrollments come in and we see how many students we are, that ratio is a 6-to-1 ratio that we maintain. So there are always going to be enough chaperones to keep that ratio. But we won't be able to confirm who else is going until we're further through this process. So we will be keeping everyone in the loop on that, and the Teams page that Brandon mentioned, we will keep that updated. All of our bios will be added to it as well, so that the public and anyone attending the trip or looking can kind of familiarize themselves with who we are. And again, the other team members, as they come on board, will get added as well. This is a really unique situation because, as was mentioned, we've never had the opportunity to include community members as well. So again, as we move forward, everything that we do will depend on the numbers we have, and we'll have a clearer idea. Probably even after Christmas, we'll have a clearer idea of how things will look, and tightening up the schedules a little bit. The itinerary that Brandon ran through is pretty close to what it's going to look like, but there could be some little tweaks here and there, minor tweaks. We're always looking for opportunities to add enrichment to our students' trip and to our community members' trip that are coming on board. So, you know, something could pop up that would present itself, and it would be a really cool thing for the students to be a part of or to get to see, or a place that we could stop in. So there will be some minor tweaks that happen.
Okay, we do have a few more questions that came in.
Perfect.
One that I'll send myself live because I can address to is concerning the course that the North Shore History course. It's the schedule, or sorry, the question is if there's a scheduling conflict with the history course, is it offered online? Yes, it's going to be offered online. It's actually kind of a different way of doing things. The province, believe it or not, is kind of starting to look at, especially in our district where we have smaller high schools, like there are courses that are offered in some of the bigger high schools that smaller high schools do not have. And so to kind of bridge that gap, now that we've gotten COVID under our belt and this whole home learning, online learning stuff, except you think I'd be better at it with the video switching than I am tonight. But the idea is that it would be offered online. Anyone in ASDN high schools could register for that course, and I would be doing it basically in this kind of format. And so if there were conflicts, I think they could be overcome because of its online delivery. So that's the plan going forward for the spring of 2024. I'm going to bring it back to you, Meredith, again, because we do have a couple more. Let me throw you here on the live. The next question is, who do they make their request in regard to the room arrangements?
And Brandon or any of the others that have taken part in and do regular school trips, maybe you guys can jump in on this one and explain that process.
Yeah, Brett, do you want to explain it, or
Or
anyone
Mark
else?
or anyone else
Yeah.
that does the school trips?
Yeah, you would go to your school lead and they know the kids best. And like, we want kids to have an enjoyable experience. You know, we're not going to throw them in with strangers. And so your team lead would be in charge of your school team lead would be in charge of designated those rooms.
Another one here, maybe, Brett, while I have you, all right, or no, you went off on me again here. I was going to say this one here might be interesting, I guess, for you to talk about. Someone heard that there's an opportunity right now, saying when a sponsorship from the Legion, should they go ahead and register as usual and then wait and find out about the info, or what would you give advice on that?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that would work exactly, but if it were my child, I would register the child, and if money came in that I didn't have to pay, that'd be great. I'm not sure how else to approach that.
Yeah, it's kind of a question mark there.
Mm.
Meredith, I'm going to send you back here. We have another one. This one is about fundraising. Will fundraising be done to help parents out with the school the kids come from?
That's a great question. And it's something that we've been talking about as a team as well. We're just in the very beginning stages, so we're gathering some information on that. At this point, it will probably be a school-related decision. Each school will probably look at that separately and determine how they want to move forward. But you'll hear more about that, I would think, very shortly. We'll have that nailed down and just look at the opportunities and, I guess, the options for the school. We have another conversation scheduled for our team shortly, so that will be one of the things we discuss. But again, it will be up to the individual schools to look at what they want to do and how they want to proceed with that one. I see here we at the cost. So I think, Brett, you had gone through those costs, what they are. For a student, it's $49.99 as the EF cost for this tour up until December 15th. And I believe it is about $600 more for adults at this time. But those rates are locked in until December 15th. So that's why, if anyone is thinking about this trip, do your research, look into it. But we would recommend, if you are interested, to really take advantage of that early bird rate, because we don't know what those increases will look like after December 15th. We know that, prices will go up, but we don't know what that will look like at this point.
And of course, the earlier you enroll, the earlier you start paying, which
Correct.
reduces the cost over the time.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, and I just wanted to add to and kind of reiterate that any of that money side of it, the costing is all through EF. The district has nothing, we don't touch that at all. So everything is directly through EF, and the website does a fantastic job. The links are all there. You can really dig in and get some really detailed information in the website. So by all means, certainly check into that if you have any questions there. Okay, we have another question about rooming. I know that you mentioned that they usually try to keep the same gender room together from the same school. Is it possible to ask to be placed in a room with others from the same gender from other schools as opposed to the same school due to personality conflicts? Again, I think that's going to be a case by case. That would be a conversation you would probably want to have with the school lead. We do, I guess I can say this, is that we do try to keep our students with their school groupings as much as possible, just because the lead and the chaperones know their students best. So they have built a relationship, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't happened. Again, we've shared in the past with the 2019 trip, we had students from different schools rooming together. So, I mean, at this point, I think it's just the best thing is to have a conversation with the school lead, your child's school lead. Anything to add there, Mark or Angie or?
Yeah, Mark here. Yeah, we last time we made the rooming list up early, based on what we knew about any potential conflicts, and then we talked to our students, and you know, and if we had to move people around, we moved them around. The issue with going to a different school is, remember, when in the hotels and things, schools may not always be in the same area, right? So that would require a change of chaperone, like probably, which, you know, would become more of an issue.
And again, we'll know more as we get closer to, you know, closer through this process. And to Mark's point, we will be starting to operationalize that. Once we have our lists and we see the enrollments, we will be starting to work on some of these things like rooming, and those are the conversations we have. And you know, over the next 18 months, a lot can change. So what it looks like in March of 23 may not look like the same thing in March of 24. So there is some flexibility there. Again, the best thing is to have a conversation with your lead, but the students and the leads work very closely together and really try to come up with the best scenario that's going to work for everyone. And I know in what Mark just mentioned, in some occasions, and I don't know what that will look like for us yet. We'll again get more information as we get closer. In 2019, because of our numbers participating in the trip, we were spread out over 2 hotels, very close to one another. But to Mark's comment, some of the schools stayed at one property and the other schools were at another property. And then we met up and the buses traveled together. But again, we'll know all of these details as we move down the line. But I guess the main thing is I don't want anyone to worry about it. That is something that we can work with the students on. We want them to have a great time. We want them to have the best possible experience traveling.
Okay, we have a question here about how much spending money would kids need?
Generally, they say about if your child had about $500, that would be sufficient. All kids have different spending habits. We've had kids drop $500 on a purse, and so if your kid is that kind of kid, then you might want to give them more than $500, or maybe less. I don't know, but like really, all they need is about $20 a day for their lunch. Other than that, their breakfasts are covered and almost all of their suppers are covered. So they can get away with not much, but most kids want to come back with a little Eiffel Tower or whatever.
And I do think, Brandon, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's in the website. It does make a recommendation that the students arrive with cash on them, just to ensure that they are able to get through the first day or so. Not, you know, when they land, they may not have access to a bank machine, or it's just good to have some cash on them when they land on the ground.
Yep, we recommend about 100 euros. 100 euros will get them off and running.
The next question I can answer, in terms of about, let me get my camera working here. Here we go. In terms of enrolling in the course, do they contact their guidance? Guidance should be aware of the course by spring. Spring is usually when high schools do their course selections. Right now, it wouldn't be in their catalog because this is kind of a new thing. But it will be brought to their attention by spring when course selection occurs. If for some reason it's not appearing as an option at a school for selection, that student can reach out to the team, and we can help guidance or whoever needs to be kind of informed about that course. So it's it would be more of a thing to worry about, say, further down the line into next spring. Okay, what is the cost that isn't covered? Anyone want to, Brett, do you want to take that one on?
Just lunches. That's all. Everything else is absolutely covered. Now, baggage, if you have an overweight bag. So EF will allow you to bring one check bag to the whatever the specifications happen to be this, in June of 2024. You're allowed a backpack and then one small carry-on. If your bag is over the weight, then you'll have to pay that amount. But other than that, everything is covered.
Okay, and I'll keep you on because there's another thing that's coming up here. Next question is, there a ferry cost? We won't be taking any ferry, won't be heading over to England or anything like that. So there'll be no boat travel at all with regards to that. The next question is about passports and travel documents stored. Are they stored by the school lead securely, or is the responsibility of the student?
That's a great question.
It is a great question.
It depends on your school lead. Our experience is that we've got a system where every student on this tour, every traveler on this tour will be given a triptych. And so the triptych is a laminated little document that has all of the important information, all of the phone numbers, all of the hotel addresses, all of the leads, phone numbers. And so that is kept with your passport on the traveler all the time. And we check, we divide the groups up into little groups of 6 or 8 or whatever, and every group has a captain. And so every time we stop, we say, captains, check for passports and triptychs, and the process can be done in 15 seconds. So you can literally check 200 people's passports and make sure they've got all their stuff they're supposed to have in less than a minute. And so that's a really good question. We have the kids in our group keep their passports on them. And so we always know if there's a passport missing, the last time we checked was here. And so it's somewhere between here and where we are now. So that system has worked really, really well over the years.
Okay, I think we're at the end of our questions, unless there's anything else that pops up here in the last second. I'm not seeing anything.
Well, I just want to remind people too that if there are questions that kind of pop up after we finish up and wrap up, we have the email address too for the North Shore Legacy website, and you can go through that as well and send any messages, any questions you may have at any point as you think of them. We will be sending home more information again as we progress through this process. I would say it's going to really start to ramp up. You'll see some more attention and information coming through probably before the end of the school year in the spring. And then when we start next year, again, you're going to see a lot more information coming out as we come into the new school year. That will culminate with the trip in May, June. Again, I can't say enough what a fabulous team of leads we have. Our 8 high schools do an incredible job engaging their students and creating amazing learning opportunities for them. And I am so excited to bring everybody together and have this district-wide trip. I mean, there's not very many places that can do this, and I am very fortunate to be a part of this. And like I said, if there are any questions that do come up, please don't hesitate to reach out.
There's one last one I see. Do they require any other documentation besides a passport? And anyone can kind of correct me. I think I know the answer to this. And right now, based on my travels last month, there isn't. I mean, like the last couple of years has been kind of other things that they need to have on them because of COVID and whatnot. A lot of those are relaxed. That's not to say that it doesn't change. Let's knock on wood that's we're going back to a more normal travel experience. So as of now, that's it. But if there are increase or other documents that are needed, EF is really good to flag us of those and provide those kinds of things that we need to be able to have filled out so that we can travel with ease. But I think that's probably the best answer for that, guys. Or is there anything I'm missing there?
Well, I think you're right. I think that's it.
Okay. All right. All the information that will be coming out where and how do we receive this information? You want to explain the teams, or I don't know, Brett maybe wants to, I'm not sure.
If you guys want to explain, go into a little bit more detail on the teams, I will say though that as students register, it'll be those people who register for the trip who are going to be receiving and have access to that information. There will be some general information, but as you register, there will be more detailed follow-ups. And Brett, if you want to go into where they can access some of that.
Yep. As soon as you submit your application through the website and begin the process of enrollment, it's really, really painless and seamless. Then you will be directed to a Teams link. And so all travelers, community members, and students will be added to this Teams link. And it's basically a hub for communication and to ask questions and to provide materials for you. It'll all be housed in the same spot.
Well, I think that's it. We're almost 20 after 8, and we appreciate everyone taking the time to join us and to be a part of this session. Thank you to all of our high school leads who are on board and were with us this evening. If you have questions, if your student has questions, please either check the website that we have. It's very comprehensive. It has so much great information in it. Or you can get your student to go and speak to their lead at their school. The leads are there exactly for that reason. And if we don't have an answer, we will find it for you. So by all means, please reach out to your school leads. And with that, I'm going to say thank you very much. We look forward to this exciting trip. The next 18 months are going to be very busy and very exciting. And we look forward to seeing those enrollment numbers go up and finding out who is going to be joining us on this fantastic trip. Good night, everyone.